Welcome to World Talk Brief. So let's get into a story that, believe it or not, kicks off with one really strange social media post from the White House. And it all comes full circle with, well, a pretty perfect comeback from a Danish politician. So picture this, January 23rd, 2026, the official White House account drops this AI-generated image. You've got then President Trump, he's walking with a penguin holding an American flag no less, and you can see the Greenland flag there in the back. And the caption? Just two words, super cryptic, embrace the penguin. Okay, so this post goes up and almost instantly the internet just exploded with confusion and, honestly, a lot of mockery. And it was all because of one really simple, glaring problem. The thing is, the post got its geography completely wrong. I mean, fundamentally wrong. Penguins, they live in the southern hemisphere, Antarctica. But Greenland, that's in the Arctic, the northern hemisphere. You just don't find penguins there at all. But here's where it gets really interesting. This probably wasn't just some random slip-up. See, this post was actually part of a much bigger political push by the Trump administration. They were trying to stake a claim to assert U.S. strategic interest in Greenland, talking about its location and all the critical minerals there. And this came after years of talk about wanting to acquire the territory, which, as you can imagine, had already stirred up some tension with Denmark and other allies. So that brings up the big question, right? Why this specific animal? Why a penguin, of all things, especially when it's geographically incorrect? Well, the answer seems to be that the administration was trying to jump on the bandwagon of a huge internet trend, something that was already taking the world by storm. They were trying to tap into the cultural zeitgeist to harness the power of what everyone was calling the Nihilist Penguin meme. So, what was this meme? Well, in early 2026, a video started making the rounds online. It showed this single, lone penguin just walking away from its colony, heading straight for these distant mountains. And it went absolutely viral. People saw this and started pouring all their own feelings into it. Feelings of burnout, of defiance, that kind of existential dread about life. It all got projected onto this one little animal's journey. Yeah, this penguin became this huge symbol for a whole generation that was just feeling completely overwhelmed by, well, everything. All the pressures of modern life. It represented this deep desire to just turn around, walk away from it all, and not have to explain yourself to anyone. But here's a twist. The footage itself? It's not new at all. It actually comes from way back in 2007, from a documentary by the legendary German filmmaker Werner Herzog. The film's called Encounters at the End of the World, and this one particular scene, this moment of really strange animal behavior, it just stuck with people for almost 20 years before it blew up as a meme. And this is so perfectly Herzog, because his goal was never just about showing facts. He calls that the accountant's truth. No, he's always searching for what he calls ecstatic truth. It's this deeper, more poetic truth that you get to through style, through imagination. And that's exactly what he did here. He took this one animal's simple action and turned it into this profound question about existence itself, basically just asking, but why? So, okay, that's the poetic truth, the ecstatic truth. But what's the scientific reality here? From a purely biological standpoint, what was actually happening to this penguin? Well, according to penguin biologists, the reality is a lot less philosophical and, frankly, a lot more tragic. It looks like it was all just a biological error. You see, Adelie penguins are actually incredible navigators. They mostly use the sun as a compass. They can look at the sun's position and combine that with the super precise internal clock they have to figure out which way to go, even across these huge, empty landscapes. But what happens if that system fails? Maybe the sky is overcast for too long, maybe the penguin gets sick, or maybe its internal clock is just a tiny bit off. Well, when that happens, they can fall into a state that scientists actually call nonsense orientation. And what that means is they just start walking in a perfectly straight line, but in a completely and fatally wrong direction. And this is the key thing. It's not a choice. It's not some act of defiance. It's just a total navigational failure. In fact, scientists have seen that even if you physically pick up a disoriented penguin and turn it back towards the sea, it'll often just turn right back around and continue its march inland to what is almost certain death. So let's zoom out a bit. How does this whole penguin story fit into the bigger picture of the internet in 2026? I mean, it was a pretty noisy digital world filled with all kinds of viral stuff. Well, unlike a lot of the other viral scares that were going around back then, things like those unverified 19-minute or 7.11 video links that had everyone worried about AI, deepfakes, and privacy, the penguin meme was different. It was based on something real, a verifiable clip from a respected documentary. And that made it, in a way, a safe place for everyone to project their feelings onto. And boy, did everyone jump on it. It wasn't just politicians, not by a long shot. You had big corporations like Red Bull and Swiggy using it in their marketing. Even the Delhi police got in on the act, using the lonely penguin for a public service announcement about road safety. It was everywhere.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, what does it all mean? This whole phenomenon, it really tells us so much more about us, about our collective mindset in 2026, than it does about penguin biology. It's like a mirror reflecting a world where people were struggling with burnout, with individualism, and just trying to find some meaning in what felt like a pretty cold and empty landscape.
So in the end, you have these two truths, right? The scientific truth is pretty straightforward. The penguin was just lost. But the cultural truth, that ecstatic truth that Herzog was talking about, well, that's where the real story is. Because in that one lost penguin's lonely walk, millions of people, just for a moment, felt like they'd been found. Subscribe to World Talk Brief for more clear, thoughtful explanations. World Talk Brief, news explained without the noise.